Welcome to Fantasy Mo Wiff, heading into week 2 of action. So in this episode, we're gonna look back to week 1 and look ahead to week number 2. Jumping back to week 1, what a night it was. Opening day, everybody was playing. We had several entries, but unfortunately the Melonheads and Archers games does not have stats yet because the game has not gone final. But here's a look at the leaderboard as it stands without those stats. Obviously, we still have a big pitching game from Jordan Smith. We have innings from Sam Eichenlob and Jason Worstenholm, me, that need to go into fantasy stats as well. There wasn't a whole lot of offense in that game as it's 0-0 in an extra inning, but there could be some negative points that might make a difference. So that game will finalize April 27th, I believe, when the Archers and Melonheads match up again, and that's when week 1 will pay out and we look at exactly how everyone did. Now, just because I want to brag on Jordan Smith, he created this spreadsheet for me. It's really cool. So it's got everybody, their price for the week, and I just type in their stats and it generates points. And some notables from week 1, Josh Richardson with his home run, his big game got him 11.5 points on the offensive side. That made him the highest point getter on the offensive side. A lot of pitching that night, not a whole lot of big offensive production by one solo player. But Tony Cochran found himself with 5.5 points as well. And James Dutton found himself with 7.5 points and a few other points sprinkled here and there. Pitching on the other side was a little bit hit or miss, as people who played Jackson Crosley would have been very happy as he scored the most points of anyone at 23 points on the mound. Caleb Schweigert had himself a great game, but because of the loss, found himself at only 8.2 points. Tony Cochran found himself in the middle of those two with 11 points on the mound. But on the other side, pitchers who didn't fare as well, like Colin Wilkerson or Justin Hall, got their team negative points for the week. So you got to be very careful about who you choose on the pitching side. Now looking ahead to week number 2, we've got some notable news, which we post right here on our Twitter. The Mojo are going to have all 8 players playing at some point in the games on Thursday. That's something we got to keep in mind on fantasy players, as that could mean some players will play less than others, but it also could get in the way of our ceiling for some of these players as well. We'll talk more about that stuff as we talk about lineups. The Archers are going to be looking for who their number 2 pitcher is in the second game of that night, so it could be James or Tony seeing any innings in that game. I'm hearing James potentially is the starter, but obviously you never know where that might go, but could be a risk-reward situation. Jake Wilson for the Bombers will be only at the second game. Last week he did not crack into the offensive lineup, so right now I don't think we're quite ready to put him into our fantasy lineups. The Bombers could be seeing Nick Bone or Hall in game 2. It'll just depend on how one is throwing. I would expect Nick Bone to start there as he is the more proven pitcher, but you never know. That could be a risk-reward situation on the mound as well against the Archers. The Empire expecting Colin and Tommy to both pitch, both of which had their struggles week 1. Those could be risky picks against that Mojo lineup as they've struggled with a little bit of command issues, but could be high ceiling if they get it figured out. I wouldn't be surprised to see a third person come in and try and eat some innings if things don't go well there. The Empire are expecting all 5 batters to be there as well. That is what we've got thus far in fantasy news around the league. We will try and post more on this thread and keep you updated as we move on. All right, so as we take a look at our form for week number 2, the scoring system has not changed yet as we have a small sample size, but we do have our week 2 pitcher prices and hitter prices. So we have updated the form a little bit, but with a lot of people being at these games, this could be a tricky situation, and we may need to include some other players. Some players have been put on this form in the drop down. Oh, you're seeing my version in the drop down instead of on this paper because they were possible starting pitchers later on. Here, let's get your perspective. So this would be the perspective you see. All right, so looking at those weekly prices, but we did create drop downs for everyone so you can find the players you're interested in. But some notables as I look at this week. Cam Smith at $10. Cam is probably pitching all of game 1, and you never know how game 2 might go. You might see more innings out of him there. Could get some big time points there. Jordan Smith is going to be slotted in to pitch an entire game as well. So that is an interesting marker to pitch. Someone I'm very interested in on the fantasy perspective is Gus Skibby, because Gus Skibby is supposed to be at these games. Gus is interesting because he is a very good pitcher, and he's only at $7. And my thought is if Gus is traveling to play, I expect him to play. Exactly the same thought on the offensive side. Is someone traveling to play, if he's going to be here this week, I'd expect plenty of at-bats for him as well. The tough side could be who pitches after Gus. You could see Brett or Jackson, both of which are very good. I've heard that Sam Skibby is planning on not pitching, but will pitch if he has to, so that's something to keep in mind. On the side of the Archers, they've got a couple people in Tony Saggio and James Chaney who could come in and pitch. You could get a steal with Colin Wilkerson if he comes through for you. You never know exactly. Pitching could be really tough this week. It might be worth just spending big. On the hitter side, there's a lot of good pitchers, so you could be very hit or miss on who's going to perform this week, as you do have Cam and Jordan pitching. What I am looking at is what pitchers are going to give up points, and my thought is I'm targeting Mojo offensive players, and I'm going to target Bombers offensive players, because those game 2s and really the whole series against the Empire has the potential for some points being scored. The tricky side with the Mojo could be who it is that's going to be getting the at-bats and scoring the points. So maybe you go with a safe bet like a Sam Skibby. I'm definitely going to be grabbing a Gus Skibby on my offense because I feel like he's going to get those at-bats. But it could be very, very tough picking out who's going to get the points there. So I may be targeting those key pieces of the Bombers lineup, hoping that in that game 2 against James or Tony, even if it's just the walks, there could be points there to be had. I haven't actually made my lineup yet, and because there's some math involved, I'm not going to do it live on screen this time. But those are some things I'm thinking as I'm playing through this week in fantasy. We will continue to update you guys on social media. Make sure you get those lineups in. It's only $5, and we can have a lot of fun while watching these games on Thursday night. And hopefully you guys are having a great time with this. Let me know in the comments section if there's anything you think we could change to make this better. Other than that, I will catch you guys next week.